My name is Laura, and I'm an artist. It's my job, my career, and my calling. Despite drawing and painting for my entire life, I denied this fact about myself for a while. You may know the stereotypes. I just didn't believe it was a real job. I decided that these were odds worth overcoming when I was given the opportunity to study art in France. I remember the exact day that I made the decision. I was in the Louvre, wandering around, a little bit lost, when I stumbled across this. Liberty Leading the People by Eugène Delacroix. Now, this isn't even my favorite painting, but I was absolutely stunned by this powerful narrative physically in front of me, so much so that it completely awakened me to my calling. I knew I was in the presence of a masterpiece. So how do we define a masterpiece? It's really just a matter of personal taste, but there are objective things we can look for in this painting to figure out why it's so good. Delacroix used realistic colors, lifelike textures, and arranged the composition in a way that's really dynamic and visually engaging. And it alludes to an historic moment, which was a very popular thing to do at the time. Depending on what you know about history, this may or may not actually do a good job of illustrating the July Revolution of 1830 in France. Now, I think this is a masterpiece for a much more spiritual component. I have no connection to 1830s France, but when I look at this allegorical figure of liberty unite this group of very different people and fight for a better future, I feel deeply moved. I don't need to understand French politics to know what hope and sacrifice feel like. What's amazing is Delacroix made this with his hands, with paint, brushes, canvas, and I think a little something special, a little something extra. So what is that something extra? How does that elevate this to masterpiece level? Was Delacroix a genius? Personally, I don't think he was. This is just a guy named Eugene who made paintings for his job, and he was good at it. But what really brought that piece to masterpiece level were his circumstances, which enabled him to put the right amount of labor and love into one painting, and also many others throughout his career. While I don't have a name for that little something extra that makes that piece so special, I know how to get it. We can tap into something greater when we have access to two critical resources: space and time. Sounds pretty basic, right? It's true, though. Our creative output can reach soaring new heights when we have access to a greater quantity and quality of space and time. Before I explain how all that works, I want to make sure you heard me correctly. Our creative output. You are creative. I know we hold a stigma that maybe some people are creative and some people aren't, but it's just not true. Some people even think if you're not good at it, why even try? But here's the thing. You don't have to be good at it for the thing that you're doing to be a creative act. If you made your breakfast this morning, you took separate ingredients and created a meal. If you've been studying for a test lately, you are creating new pathways in your brain so you can better understand that subject. Take a second to think about all the things you do and consider thinking of those as creative acts that might just be worthy of better resources. So let's talk about space and time, starting with space. Let's say you need to write an essay or a piece of creative fiction. Before you start, maybe you choose to clean up your desk first. If you're anything like me, you're going to clean your whole entire apartment. Why is that? This is how space affects us. Our environments are full of stimuli that affect the way we work. So if you have a messy room, this can distract you from focused activity. However, the right environment for you can make your task easier. So think about what comes naturally to you. Gaze out of the window, fidget, dance. These are ways that you can use your space to process your ideas outside of yourself. It's there to inspire you. So take care of your space, cultivate it, and curate it the way you want so that it inspires you to create rather than hold you back. Space can also have an influence on what we choose to make in the first place. In my practice as a studio artist, I find that when I'm renting a larger art studio, I feel empowered to make huge artworks. Conversely, my artwork tends to shrink when my space feels cramped. While I can't always control the amount of square feet I have, I did find a workaround, a good habit, so that I'm always using my space effectively. I always keep a second table in my art studio that is just for experimentation. I can spend weeks at a time working on the same type of painting in my main area, but when I move over to that second table, I get to play. Let me show you some of the results of what I've gained from keeping that second table around. Here, I learned that ink sticks to plastic really beautifully. In this piece, I totally messed up this map, but I was able to salvage it to create a new piece about the fragility of cities. And here, I learned how to build my own LEDs so that I could light up my sculptures from the inside. Designating space within the space that I have made me feel free enough to be more creative. If I hadn't done that, I don't think these pieces would exist today. So, how does time factor into our creative process? I think this quote by Toni Morrison does a great job of explaining. We are traditionally rather proud of ourselves for having slipped creative work in there between the domestic chores and obligations. I'm not sure we deserve such big A+ for that. Just like we may need more space than a task physically requires, we need more time than we think we do. It is okay to make mistakes. It is normal to start over. Don't let some perceived scarcity of time make you think that you can never mess up when you create. The difference between a mistake being helpful or harmful is how close your deadline is. So, how do we find more time when there's only 24 hours in a day to work with? The trick is not from adding more time, but for how we choose to spend that time through our priorities. I know we all have things that eat a ton of time with no real gain, like a long TV binge or too much social media. And those should really get ranked lower in your priorities than your new guitar lessons. Now, family, school, and work can keep the top spots in your priorities. You can still be a responsible person and take back time for creativity. Think about rearranging your schedule a little bit so that those smaller blocks of free time get condensed into a larger session one day a week. When you manage to find or make time for your creative practice, make sure you protect it. You can still have a life and go out with your friends spur of the moment, but not if that's during your creative time. Don't let others say that what you're doing is not important, because creative work is work. So when prioritizing space and time for our creative work, you can't have one without the other. If you have lots of time for a project, but no space to work on it, that time is going to feel frustrating and unproductive. If you have a big, beautiful space to work in, but no time to actually go there, then what's the point? You really need to have both. Better spaces plus lots of time will help you produce that better quality art. I understand that in an age where all communication is instant and real estate is skyrocketing in price, that it can feel impossible to take more time and more space for yourself. While you may be sticking up for your creativity for the first time today, artists have been working against odds like this for a long time. I'm sure you've all heard the term starving artist. Can you work when you're hungry? Even artists who are successful, who successfully made masterpieces, they're just regular people who get tired, sick, and need days off. Even our friend Eugene here, he lived to be 65, but I wonder what else he might have painted in his career if he had survived his illness. Artists are still taking on extra jobs to pay the bills at the expense of creating. We do not have some magical ability to thrive in bad conditions. I met an artist this summer who had to take several weeks off from creating because she had no air conditioning in her art studio in Texas. This is not something to be romanticized. In a society where art careers do not often have steady wages, health insurance, or affordable workspace, new masterpieces stop happening. So why is it that we have this notion that artists are somehow exempt from requiring the same resources as other vocations? I suspect that this is because art is inclusive. Art is one of the few fields that you can dabble in for fun and do so safely. You can have a career in anything and choose to paint watercolors on the weekends, but there is no such thing as a Sunday surgeon. Artists are often fighting for legitimacy in our own professions, and therefore we are constantly fighting for resources like space and time. Rather than fight, my dream is to foster a community where we give. Thankfully, some organizations are already on this problem by providing affordable studio space and other resources to local artists. If your community has a place like this, and not all communities do, please consider supporting them. Even if you don't use the tools that they offer, you get to enjoy what the artists make as a result. When being creative at home, talk to your family or your roommates about what you need to be creative, and then listen to their needs too. Work together as a household to give each other the space and time you need and help each other protect it. If you're in a position of leadership, consider providing things like this to your team, like offering flexible schedules. And if you've tried, but you just can't find any more space or time for yourself, ask for it. Normalize that this is a universal need, because creativity is in all of us. When we feel free to be our most creative, with the support of good spaces and lots of time, it could be you who makes our next masterpiece. Thank you.